Call to order this Building and Fire Code Board of Appeals meeting. And I'd like to start with roll call. For roll call, I will call board members' names in alphabetical order. If you have a camera, please turn it on, and then I will call your name. Jeff Hornbuckle.
Here.
Nick Kuntz.
Here.
James Langhorn. James, I think you need to turn on your mic.
Here.
Okay, very good. John Maloney.
Here.
Tim Marston.
Here.
And Paul Spieler here. So in general business, we have a nomination of a vice chair, and we will now nominate a member of the board for vice chair. Board members, please unmute yourself and use a camera if you have one. If you don't have a camera, please announce your name before speaking.
This is Nick
Do we
Kuntz.
have any nominees for a vice chair?
This is Nick Kuntz. If Jim Marston will accept the nomination, I would nominate him.
This is Jim. I'm not sure if I can do that. Can we have other nominations?
This is Paul Spieler. I would like to nominate Jeff Hornbuckle if he is interested.
If no one else is.
How about you, Mr. Langhorn? Are you interested?
No, sir. I've done that before. I find I have a hard time following the meeting if I'm stuck doing what Paul has to do.
This is Jim. I wonder if Nick would like to do this.
No, I don't think I would.
Okay. Well, this is Jim again. I appreciate the honor, but with my low vision, it's too hard to take care of all these things that goes on. I see what Paul goes through, and I just don't think I could do a good job. So I'll have to decline.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim. I don't know if we have any more nominations. So we'll need a motion from the board to approve the nomination of Jeff Hornbuckle as vice chair.
How about Mr. Maloney? Mr. Maloney, are you interested?
I'd be glad to nominate Jeff Hornbuckle.
Can I understand what this entails?
I think, Jeff, what happens is if I'm not able to attend the meeting, then you would be taking over my position as the chair of the meeting.
Okay.
I think you would be a good candidate. So Jeff, are you on board if you become nominated?
Sure.
For that? Okay. All right, so we need a motion from the board to approve the nomination of Jeff Hornbuckle as vice chair.
So John Maloney, I'll make that nomination.
Great. Do we have a second on the motion?
I would second it.
Okay, seconded by James Langhorn.
Yes, sir.
Call to a vote on the nomination of Jeff Hornbuckle as vice chair. Jeff Hornbuckle.
Yes.
Okay. Nick Kuntz.
No.
James Langhorn.
Aye.
John Maloney.
Aye.
Jim Marston.
Yes.
Paul Spieler. Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations, Jeff. You are our vice chair. We will now open for public comment for anyone wishing to speak up about items not on this agenda. Please note, due to time constraints, each person may be limited to 2 minutes. And we'll have Maria check. Is there anyone that wishes to speak, Maria?
No, there are no members of the public that wish to speak, and we did not receive any written correspondence on items on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We will therefore now close public comment and move on to the first subject item. The
This
first
is Jim
item is,
Marston. This is
Yes,
Jim. Can I
Jim.
just say I'm glad that Tina and Jose and whoever else were able to change the agenda so that people can send in public comments and it'll be forwarded to the board and also become part of the record. So I appreciate that that move was made. Thank you.
Similarly, I would like to publicly acknowledge my appreciation for the fact that we got these staff reports a week in advance. That's very helpful for me. But I do want to bring up a lingering concern that I raised a
okay,
while back.
Nick, we have announcements coming up. So let's get through the approval of the minutes and then we'll follow I have an agenda list. So we'll do an announcement. So I'll have you
Great.
state that in an announcement, okay?
Great.
Okay, so we have approval of the minutes of the Building and Fire Board of Appeals meeting of March 4th, 2021. Are there any comments from the board? Please unmute yourself and use a camera if you have one. If you don't have a camera, please announce your name before speaking. Are there any comments from the board? Very well, we need a motion from the board to approve the minutes.
This is Jim Marston. I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
This is John
Jim.
Maloney, I'll
Do we
second
have-
that.
John Maloney, thanks for seconding. Okay. Call to vote on the March 4th, 2021 minutes. We will use roll call. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Jeff Hornbuckle,
Aye.
Nick Kuntz,
Aye.
James Langhorn,
I abstain. I wasn't there.
John Maloney,
Aye.
Jim Marston,
Aye.
Paul Spieler, aye. Motion carries. Okay, now we have announcements from the board or staff. Please remember to turn on your camera if you need to speak or state your name using your camera. So Nick, I believe you had something you wanted to announce.
Yeah. So I have a realization or concern rather that state law requires this board's makeup to not only include 2 disabled members, 2 trade professionals, and 1 member of the general public. It's obviously worded differently, but the intent is clearly to keep a fair balance that doesn't exist today. And there was a local ordinance expanding our board to 7 members, ostensibly to be more flexible, but it lacks this neutral party that's not a trade professional who is not vying for contracts from our appellants.
This is Jim Marston. Is Attorney Domas there?
I am here.
Okay, weren't you going to look into that and let us know about this general public position?
I did. I looked through my emails. I notified the clerk's office on April 15th, and they made the correct language, and they are aware of the qualifications for the new recruitment. So that was done on April 15th with the new advertisements to go out for the position opening. And I will confirm, they showed me the edited language on April 15th. I will confirm that that went out and then how the recruitment process is going.
Thank you very much.
That's great for future recruitment, but what about the fact that we currently have a board makeup that doesn't comply with state law and is creating an unfair bias against the disabled?
It wouldn't be Commissioner Kuntz. It wouldn't be state law because we've moved it to 7. It would be the municipal code issue now, because the state law is 5. So on top of it, this isn't an issue, has not been agendized, so I wouldn't feel comfortable going into detail on that. But as far as I'm concerned, it was brought to my attention, and the remedy is to immediately rectify it by doing recruitment and making sure the composition continues to follow it. So nothing in it would void any decision by the board currently, but that's what the makeup is going to continue to be in terms of getting proper applications and proper members to be included.
All right, thank you. Are there any other announcements?
Mr. Chair, Jim Langhorn.
Yes, Jim.
As to Nick's concerns, I'm a retired engineer. I'm not taking contracts and not looking for work. I think that at least in the interim, hey, he can rest assured that I'm not there to discriminate against anyone.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, and I do have an announcement, and this is regarding the procedure and how the board hears and addresses comments on appeals or subject items that we are spreaded with. And this is primarily just to help keep our meeting on an agenda. And so the standard procedure, and this, we also get questions asked on what the format is, from the public. So basically, first, the staff will present their case on the appeal. Then the appellant will present their request for an appeal. We then open for public comment. And after public comment, the board then can deliberate and ask questions. But it's encouraged that the board wait until this time to ask questions to the staff and appellant, as it will help to expedite the hearing process. Lastly, the board is asked to make a motion to accept, amend, or deny the standing motion presented by staff, and then the board then votes on the said motion. So that was my announcement. And then are there any other announcements from the board members? Okay, that brings us to our first subject item, which is,
Mr. Chair, I
14,
do have a couple of announcements.
okay,
You can hear me. So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, just want to let you know that item number 2 for the appeal, that was the 2001 Gillespie, was withdrawn from the agenda. And the Marymount School appeal that was heard previously was withdrawn by the applicant. They're going to pursue a code compliant accessible path to travel or an access for the school. And the validation of construction cost policy by staff report will be presented to the board on October 7th.
all right, thank you, Jose. Any other announcements?
Not an announcement. I just wanted to make one point clear in terms of Commissioner Kuntz. The makeup of the board is that state law is under 1995 7.5, and we have our Muni Code requirement, but this deals with appeals. So if we, for example, have in terms of who serves, so for example, if there's an appeal with 5 people, 2 must be from the disabled community. If it's 7, 3 must be. So any appeal that we hear, so not so much the makeup of the board, but any appeal that we hear should have that ratio. So if we have 2 members of the board that are from disabled community, then we should have 5 hearing it with two members as alternates, but not here casting a vote in the matter. So just to clarify that.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. My concern is for that neutral party, which, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Langhorn satisfies. But in a 5-member board where Mr. Langhorn is not available, I would have a problem with that on an accessibility appeal.
Yeah, I understood. And so that's why we have to have, the makeup is what it is. The best way to remedy it is, like I said, the 5-2 and the 7-3, and then going forward and correcting and having recruitment even further to make sure the next member is from the disabled community, which is being done.
Just clarifying for point of order moving forward. If we ever seat accessibility hearing and have a 5-member board, but we don't have Mr. Langhorn available, would it be my prerogative to request that we reschedule until Mr. Langhorn is available?
That wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
This is Jim Marston. I have 2 questions. One is for Mr. Doimus. I might have missed this, but when is the new recruitment going to go out, and what date would they be seated?
Commissioner Marson, I don't know that. I'm going to find out from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jose, good news on Merrimont. I'm glad to see they're going to go and proceed. Will they be then having to have a new permit request with plans and stuff, or how does that? Can you just tell me briefly how they're going to proceed with that? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Board Member Mortson, yes, they will have to submit for a new permit application, and then that is going to go through his regular review process for code compliance.
All right, thank you. Very good.
All right, we'll close announcements now, and we'll go on to our first subject item, which is 415 Castillo Street, which is appeal of notice of violation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Board members, just wanted to introduce the next item. Thank you. So yes, this afternoon you will be hearing the request to overturn the notice of violation for the second story addition to the primary residence located at 1415 Castillo Street. Just want to make a note, Mr. Chair and board members, the appellant did submit a copy of their presentation along with some of the documents it will be presenting. This will be emailed to you by staff, and this will also be made available to the public for public viewing.
All right, thank you.
And with that, I will pass it on to you, Mr. Chair, and to staff that will be presenting the report.
Okay, so again, it's 415 Castillo Street, and this is a request to overturn the notice of violation for the second story addition to the primary residence. The chair recognizes staff for presentation of the appeal. Staff, please present and advise of the standing motion. Okay, I think we need to turn on your mic, please. Okay, that's okay. We can hear you. Yes.
Hello, Chair and board members. My name is Timo Rodriguez, Building Inspector for the City of Santa Barbara. Presenting the memorandum on the case of 1415 Castillo Street. On March 19th, 2020, a complaint was filed with the City of Santa Barbara Building and Safety for work without permits. On March 16, 2021, Timo Rodriguez, City Inspector, inspected the subject property along with Brian Hurley, Contract Inspector, Don Sherry, and Brooke Van Dyne, architects for the owners, as well as Nancy Hamilton, the property owner. The building inspector found work that was completed without building permits. The investigation could not find any building permits for the following. Remodel and additions to the main residence, construction, addition, and the change of occupancy to the habitable space of the garage, electrical of outdoor spa and washer and dryer area, plumbing on the outdoor shower and the washer and dryer area, wood fence that was constructed on the adjacent property. Could go down a little bit. Discovery findings. On February 15th, 1978, planning modification to the second story addition and a new one-car garage were approved, but there are no records of approved architectural plans, approved structural calculations, or building permits for the work that has been completed. See Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 is on page 5 of this report. I apologize. My exhibits probably don't match this one. This would have been on. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Exhibit 1 is on page 3. I apologize. My exhibits are a little different. Here is modification approval, showing that the approval request was deemed appropriate, and modification to permit the proposed two-story addition to the existing residence. So they were to permit the second story and the garage. If we go, can we go back to the staff report? Under discovery findings, the property value inspector from the county, Santa Barbara County Assessor's Office documented the addition of the first and second floor and a new one-car garage on March 13th of 1979. This would have been on page 4, Maria. If we could go down a little bit. The highlighted area shows the County of Santa Barbara Assessor's Office. This is he's the property value inspector, not a building inspector, who's documented this. On the staff report, if we could go back to the staff report, sorry. The permit application dated February 18th of 1987 for the water softener that was pulled by owner Guzman. The application shows the number of stories to be 1. That could be on page 6. Highlighted area, exhibit 3, showing the application for this water softener, and there was only 1 story by the owner Guzman. Back to the staff report. On May 5th, 1997, a correction notice was issued by the city inspector for additions and alterations to the existing residence. Exhibit 4 would be on page 7. If we go back to the staff report. On July 15th, 1997, the previous owner, Paul Guzman, applied for a building permit for a new second-story addition to the existing 1-bedroom, 1-bath family room, laundry room. The permit application was expired on July 27th, 1998. That would be on page 8. Going back to the staff report. The notice of violation was issued to the property owners and agents on May 11th of 2021. That would be on page 9. On the housing rehabilitation program for the city did not allow additions that occurred during that time, and the program did request plans if required for the permit. See Exhibit 7, page 24. And if I'm gonna just go through them real quick. Page 12, if we could turn to number 38 of the exhibits. This shows, I've highlighted certain areas to show the rehabilitation program did not allow for other additions. on page 44. New construction is ineligible. Page 45. The following cost is not eligible for the rehabilitation loan, new construction. Page 46. Maybe, no. I'm sorry, Maria. 45. Okay, I'm sorry. Can we go to page 51? This is showing the most, make sure the loan funds are used for authorized by the loan agreement. Next page, 52. The city building inspector, not the specialist, performs the code inspections throughout the progress of the job and signs the permit approving the work as meeting the applicable costs. Next page. And projects and plans are required such for a room addition foundation work. An addition step may be required. Next page. It is the responsibility of the borrower to select the designer to prepare the plans and to the work with the designer to ensure that the plans meet the borrower's needs. The specialist must also approve the plans as being in compliance with the scope of the work permitted under this program guidelines. And if we could go to page 65, Murray. Just another note, the city inspector, not the specialist, performs the code inspections throughout the progress of the job, signs the building permit approving the work, meeting the applicable codes. The specialist shall approve payment for any work done in violation of the codes as determined by the city building inspector. If we could go back to staff report. This was appealed. My notice of violation was appealed on May 21st, 2021. You see that through Exhibit 8. I don't believe we need to go there. Just a summary, the city inspector could not find any building permits for the work that was found during the inspection. The County of Santa Barbara Assessor's Office did not have the authority to approve any additions without permits. And the recommendations, the city inspector recommends upholding all violations noted in the notice violations dated May 11, 2021, and requests the owners to obtain permits for the garage and fence that were not noted on the notice of violation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, board members, we can now hear from the appellant.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had it on mute. So now we can hear from the appellant to present their request for an appeal. Appellant, I think you're made the same mistake I have and you're muted right now. Appellant, we still can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hello, my name is Nancy Hamilton. My family purchased a home at 1415 Castillo in February of 2020 with my daughter, Jordan Hamilton, who currently lives there. We are here today because the proper documentation for the structure located at 1415 Castillo is missing in the city file, and we are appealing number 2 on the city's list of violations. The city is requesting that we permit a second-story addition and garage that were constructed in 1978. They were funded by the City of Santa Barbara Housing Rehabilitation Loan Program, as evidenced by 2 loan numbers we have. They were dated and signed with a final inspection on August 15, 1978 by Charles Dreyer, who was the official building administrator from 1977 to 1987. And they were described in various city housing rehabilitation loan documents in 1978. The second-story addition and garage are also noted and described in the official City of Santa Barbara residential building record dated March the 13th, 1979 of the Tax Assessor's Office. Today, I ask the board these questions. How could a city building official sign and date a final inspection of a structure that's not recognized or permitted by the city? How could the city grant a modification for a second-story addition and garage to be constructed without visiting or recognizing the addition and the garage? How could the second-story addition and the garage be described in detail and drawn on the official building record of the Tax Assessor's Office in 1977 if it did not exist? And how could the City of Santa Barbara HRLP program fund 2 loans for the rehabilitation of a structure without the city's approval or acknowledgement of the construction? Our basic case is that the city has not maintained a defensible custody of evidence, and the exhibits being offered today will demonstrate this. The exhibits being presented today include HRLP loan documents, the City of Santa Barbara modification letter for the addition, the City of Santa Barbara tax assessor documents and building records, Sanborn maps showing the structures, statements from former city building officials, various newspaper articles, and audio testimony on the flaws within the city record keeping at the time of the project. We would also like to offer evidence that Dave Davis, Betty Hinnon Weiss, Mitt Moshlin, Roxanne Durbiano, and Danny Cato, along with other city planners, have accepted such supporting documentation in the past as adequate evidence of legal construction when permits have been missing. Their predecessor, Chuck Dreyer, did as well. Experts, attorneys, journalists, and historians have continually provided evidence in previous appeal hearings showing that the City of Santa Barbara Building Department was in disarray during the time of this addition. It moved 4 times in 10 years, not counting the 3 years it was at the county. Between 1972 and 1982, there were 7 building officials and staff turnover was at an all-time high. We offer further evidence of the city's flawed record management as shown in several Santa Barbara News Press articles and in the audio testimony from Roy Hawthorne, a former building official of the City of Santa Barbara. In response to Tima Rodriguez's argument that HRLP policy guidelines dated 2002 states that the city HRLP program does not fund additions and therefore this is in violation, we offer the following statement from Dennis Ellich, a former building official who worked closely with HRLP from 1977 to 1990s. He said that the housing code policies were different than the building code policies in the 1970s. There were many cases where HRLP authorized additions, and these additions were based on various qualifications and recommendations of HRLP staff. The city did not want to perform the inspections for HRLP cases due to budget constraints in the late 1970s, and these were outsourced to consultants and other county staff employees. I'm not here today with the intention of arguing with the current city officials about a missing permit, but rather to find a reasonable resolution to a previously flawed system that continues to fail all of us. In conclusion, and to reiterate, this was a project that was funded, supervised, and inspected by the City of Santa Barbara HRLP program and signed off by Charles Dreyer, who was the head of the city building department in 1978. While HRLP may have had different guidelines in the city and their permitting process, the question remains is how or why a city official and city department would sign off on an entire second-story addition if it were not previously permitted and part of the overall construction going on at that time. If it were as easy as finding a missing document or missing permit to satisfy the city in this case, that would be wonderful. However, the city's findings, the structure is in violation because of a missing document, and then expecting us, the new owners, to permit the structure to meet today's requirement is grossly prohibitive. Current building requirements are much different than those in 1978, and this would require us to completely remodel the existing structure to meet current codes, which would result in a significant financial hardship and would be extremely unreasonable based on all of our findings. My daughter Jordan lives in the home, and she's a nurse at Samson Pulmonary Clinic. She saved for several years for a down payment on the home so that she could hopefully stay in Santa Barbara. Sorry. The city continually stresses the need for affordable housing for our community's workforce. However, putting her under this type of financial hardship is in direct contradiction to making the city more affordable, and it is a deterrent for any young professional who is trying to work and build a life in Santa Barbara. Sorry. First exhibit that I'd like to show is from Roy Osborne. And it was an email that says, I will say that if you have both accessory documents for the construction of your house and a housing redevelopment loan record, you have enough, as the rehab inspectors were employed by the Community Development Department, which was created by an act of City Council as reported by the Santa Barbara News Press on January 11th, 1974. Rehab would not loan money for a house in the city that did not have a permit. And many rehab inspectors were hired by Building and Safety during budget cuts in the mid to late 1970s, when the city was in total disarray. And these are just, there were actually over 100 articles regarding this finding. So I just included two, just talking about what was going on at the time that this project was completed. The next thing I'd like to offer is the residential building record of the tax assessor. And I can barely see it. I think I have to look at mine. So in the remarks in March 13th, 1979, it said visit addition in both first and second floor, demolish, and then it goes in talking about the new foundation, and it describes exactly what was done. 2 bedrooms, 1 full bath upstairs, nice job, and a new 1-car garage built on the old foundation. Forced air heat installed both upstairs and downstairs. And then it says increase effective year to 1980. So, and then there's a drawing on this showing where the addition was made to a full bath, and that's exactly where it is today. And on the right-hand side, it talks about the addition and the addition of square footage. The next item, which is I think one of the most important ones, is that the City of Santa Barbara Home Rehab Loan Program Certificate of Final Inspection. The 2 loan numbers at the top, we've researched those were paid and granted. And then you see down below the certificate of final inspection. Final inspection has been made of the property rehabilitation with federal financial assistance. The construction work has been satisfactorily completed in accordance with the construction contract and applicable city building codes. And that is the building official for the City of Santa Barbara at the time, signed on September the 8th of 1978, Charles D. Dreyer. And that is just another showing the year that it was completed and the final date of inspection, another piece of paper. The next is the Community Development Department, and this was a letter that was recommending the modification for the interior side setbacks so that the property, the 950 square foot dwelling property, so that this addition could be made and a detached garage to be added. And then that was signed. And then we have the next one where the Community Development Department. This is at a public hearing on February 15, 1978. The modification hearing officer approved the request for a modification to permit the proposed two-story addition to the existing residence to be 1 foot from the interior lot line. Also, a detached one-car garage to be located on the interior lot line. That's the same one. And then we have the actual drawing, which is exactly as it is today, the existing residence, and then it shows where the two-story addition is and then where the garage is. And then we have the City of Santa Barbara Planning Commission application for modification. And so this is the request, and then it says, I desire this modification in order to demolish a portion of the residence, 1 story, and erect a 2-story addition in its place, the northern wall of which will be 2 feet from the property line, demolish the detached garage, the southern wall of which will be 2 feet, and the eastern wall which will be 1 foot from the property line. And then to secure an appropriate improvement of the subject property and the uniformity of such an improvement consistent with the size, space limitations with setback requirement prohibits. And then it says yes. And then these are just more information of exactly what went on. And then we get into one of the things that Timo kept on saying, that a city official had to sign off. And when we went down and asked for anything from the current HRLP people, Lucy Graham, who's now working at the city, said that they don't keep any records and they didn't have the guidelines for the HRLP in the 70s. We did receive some of the guidelines from an expert, and one of them just talks about how you had to have this checklist, which is also in the file as we go down. I think we have to go down a little bit further. And this was the exact description, we'll just keep on going, of exactly what was done in 1978, of what was being required in order for the loan to be funded. And it's frame complete per attached plans, a 2-story addition. This item includes raised wood floor structure, but does not include continuous concrete foundation, piers and posts, all framing, all sheeting, all windows and doors, and all exterior siding, all finished carpentry and cabinetry are also included in this item. And accommodations to other trades must be made to facilitate overall construction plan. Note special milling of siding may be required to match the existing. And then it just keeps on going, and I'm sorry, keep on, yes. And then this is all part of that, just keeps on saying what they needed to do. It was their checklist, and that was part of what was required at the time before the city inspector would do the final sign off, which is what we have again. When we, go ahead, let's see what else we have here. Oh, I want to address when Timo was asking about saying that there was a permit denied in the 90s. When I purchased the house, it was a trust sale, and the owner had passed away, and the real estate agent one of the trustees told me that they had actually gone back, the man, Paul Guzman, had gone back to the city in the 90s, and he was actually applying for a new addition off the back of the house, which was going to be a family room and a bedroom, because he wanted one of his daughters to be able to live there and take care of him. And that permit that expired has nothing to do with what was done in the 70s and all of the information that we've already presented you. That is a totally different item. And I think it's very confusing because it's being lumped in looking like they had gone back to ask for a permit, because I don't think that they ever thought that this wasn't permitted. That's my understanding. And then the rest of the file is just the file itself, just everything that was in the file. Yeah, that's the expired one that Timo said when he was saying this, when the guy went out with a water softener and it was a single story. And then that was a completely different situation. And these are the Sambor maps, which actually show the home and the garage. And then you can see it here. And then, right, yeah, that's it. And that's actually, we were doing a scale that is the size of the house now. And so we actually also had some Google images, which I didn't include. I had one from 2021, but we're trying to get one that's like back in the 80s that shows the house as a 2-story. I don't think there's any debate that the addition and the garage were done in 78. And I think the debate is just on basically where is the permit. And I believe, based on our case and all the evidence that we have from former building inspectors and officials and from the tax assessor and from a final signature for a date of final inspection from the head building official at that time, I really do believe that this is sufficient to removing the violation. Oh, and these are the plans. I'm sorry, guys. We also have a set of plans that were given to us by the heir of the man who passed away. And these were the pretty detailed plans on what went on when they did the addition. And we used these actually when we had the house inspected when we were purchasing it. And we asked the inspector to verify that all the things were done, and he did. And that's all the documents. Yeah. Oh, and I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy Hamilton. We would now like to entertain comments from the public regarding this project.
Hi, this is Maria here. There are no members of the public with public comment, and we also didn't receive any written correspondence on this item.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll close public comment on this item. Are there any questions from the board to the staff or the appellants? Please be sure to use your camera when speaking.
This is Nick Kuntz. One thing that I'm curious about is staff comments that there was a fence that was constructed on the adjacent property. Is that correct? It's on the adjacent property?
Board Member Kuntz, yes, correct. There was something that I did leave out of my notice of violation. That was the fence on the neighboring property of 1417 Castillo. There were larger other matters that I were addressing, and I unfortunately forgot to add that to the notice of violation.
Well, I'm struggling to understand how something on an adjacent property is this appellant's problem.
They were the ones who constructed the fence.
You allege. Where's the evidence of that?
I apologize, Board Member Kuntz. That was a part of one of the items that came in from the complaint.
So somebody complained. So that did you speak to the adjacent property owner? Do they allege that the appellant erected that fence?
Correct, Board Member Kuntz. After speaking with the adjacent property, that they were the ones who they were arguing the appellant, the current owners are the ones who constructed the fence.
Okay. And seems to me that a lot of this, the city's policy on a zoning information report is intended to protect new home buyers from this kind of stuff. Was there a ZIR when you bought the home, Ms. Hamilton? Sorry, you're muted again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, there wasn't a ZIR. The sale was a trustee sale. The man had passed away, and the agent did not provide a ZIR. I did get seller's disclosures, and on the seller's disclosure statement, it said that there was nothing ever. Nothing was ever done without a permit. There's questions they ask, and I'm actually a real estate agent, so I actually read those very closely. I didn't have a seller to ask. I only had a seller's heir who hadn't lived there for like 20 years to ask. And so it said that nothing had been done without a permit. And in the file, what I kind of want to point out, which I think is one of the issues that might shed some light on this, is that the neighbor who called in and is in complaint of the fence, I don't think this is really personal to my family, and I included it in the file because over the past 20 years, he was complaining consistently. I mean, literally like all the time. He had something that was really bothering him with this previous owner. I don't know what it was. I did see that in the file when I was purchasing it, and I thought maybe it was a personal situation with the previous owner. He was consistently calling the city, calling the city. So when we purchased the house, I actually may have sent this. I think I had it in the file. I don't know if this is in the file, but there is a photo we took from Google Earth from 2000, before we purchased the property, and it shows the fence that is in question, even though this isn't what we're here for today. And when we purchased the house, the fence was falling down, and the person who turned us in asked us, would we build a new fence? And my husband said, sure. And he asked us to build it about a foot inside because he felt like it was on his property line. And we said, sure. And we did it. And then he asked us to change it again. And we felt that that was being, I don't know, kind of manipulative. And I think that's when everything started. So that might shed a little bit of light on what Timo was saying. I don't think part of this violation on number 2, but I actually went over the other day because I got a call from my daughter who said, Mom, I think there's a county official trying to climb into the back of my yard. And I said, I don't think that's a county official. So I got in my car and I rushed over to the house. And when I got out, there was a surveyor there, and the man next door and his daughter basically came out with a shovel and started screaming at me and calling me names and telling me that they were going to get me and get the city and all these things. And as I got back in my car, he shouted, I know where you live now. And he shouted my address. So I got very kind of shaken up because this is my daughter who lives in the house. And I filed a police report. So this is something that has really very little to do with what we're talking about, removing the violation today, that I think is very, very unfair. I'd see how Timo couldn't find it in the file, but I think there's plenty of evidence that it does not need to be looked at this way. But that might shed a little bit on what's going on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Board Member Kuntz, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to comment on one item I saw. So I think Timo was reading some of the requirements that I believe it was that you cannot add a bedroom or square footage to new construction to the residence. But there was a letter that I saw from Robert Scruggs, the modification hearing officer, and he actually argued that, let's see if I have the right letter here. Hold on a second. This was written by, it was to Mr. Scruggs. It was written by Mr. Paul, the inspector, and they were, the inspector was saying that it was needed to have a second story. He said the second story is required to conform the house to minimum square footage requirements for habitable rooms as modified in the Uniform Building Code and housing standards. The new structure will actually enhance the aesthetic value of the neighborhood. So this is the Home Rehabilitation Loan Program inspector that was recommending that those bedrooms be added. So, perhaps maybe the guidelines were different than the 2002 guidelines that Timo Rodriguez read to us.
And thank you, Paul. I believe that's what Dennis Elledge was saying, and he was part of that program. A couple of these people that I was given names for to call, they're on vacation, they're traveling. Dennis Elledge was literally getting in his car, and he was nice enough to explain to me what was going on there. And he said, there are so many instances in the 70s and 80s where second stories and additions were permitted through the HRLP program. And he said he'd be happy, if needed, to try to find some of those for me, but he was on his way on a plane to go on vacation. it was just a different time, I think, and the requirements were different. And I'm sorry, and he also said a lot of times they went out based on, they would look at it as a need basis. So if someone had a son and a daughter, they wouldn't put them in the same bedroom. So then they would say, based on that, we were going to change these guidelines to be able to do the construction through the HRLP program.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have any comments?
This is Jim Marston. I have a question for Mr. Rodriguez. I want to say I was impressed with your thoroughness and looking at all this stuff. I know there's a problem with missing permits and stuff, but you did a lot of due diligence looking for that. But so I have a question here. If we get rid of the problem of missing permits, if they are there current violations that you think the new homeowner is responsible for, such as a fence or any of this other plumbing? Is that any of that new, or is that all going back to 1978 in the 80s?
Thank you, board member, for giving me the opportunity. If we can refer back to the notice of violation. Stand by.
What? Oh, cute.
That would be on page 9 of my staff report.
I'm sorry, Timo. What page was it?
Page 9. So Chair and board member, that these are the alterations that I've also found besides the addition and the remodel of the interior residence was also done. The bathroom, the kitchens, the porch area was enclosed to create a additional habitable space. In addition to the garage in question was also done, creating a bathroom in the garage. Washer and dryer units were installed to the exterior. Washer and dryer, I'm sorry, a shower was also installed on the exterior of the garage. Electrical and spa were installed on in the setbacks. And as far as I know, the location of the water heater was in question. It is in the interior setback as well.
Can I ask about that spa? Is that a freestanding portable spa? Then that's not a construction. That's in my opinion. Setback shouldn't apply to that.
Board member Kuntz, there was electrical that was there. That was the biggest concern, and the safety of the lock that I saw. There is requirements for the actual lid of that spa.
Okay, speak. Can I address that, please?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Hamilton.
So some of Timo's findings have merit, and I agree with them. And I have hired Don Sherry, who's an architect, to help us satisfy the permits for some of Timo's findings. Number 2 and number 5 definitely, in my eyes, don't have merit. When he says remodeling the inside, we did refinish the floors, we did retile the showers, we did put in new appliances, but the interior of the house remains exactly as it was when we purchased it. The main thing that I do agree with what Timo says, and we are working to do, is that we did put a bathroom in the garage because my daughter was hoping to rent the garage out to a fellow person that she works with at the hospital, and to help pay the mortgage, as most people do, and that we're going to work in to get to an ADU permit for. So that is something that we absolutely agree with, and we are going to work with our architects and with the city to permit. The other violation is the one that was just really kind of jaw-dropping, and we're just basically appealing the second story and the garage because we purchased a house and there's plenty of evidence that that was all permitted at the time in 1978. I mean, we're happy to do number one, trim the landscape, and we're happy to, do hear people talking. I'm sorry, I keep on hearing people as I talk.
If you're not, excuse me, if you're not speaking, could you please mute yourself? We have some background noise.
So today we're just here. Sorry, today we're just here really to dispute number 2 and number 5, and the other issues I believe we are happy to take care of. For me, it's just an issue of fairness and finding a resolution so that whether we keep this house in our family forever or we sell it, that the next person doesn't have to go through something like this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board members?
It's John Maloney. I have a comment. Or did you want to go, Jim? Can't hear you, Jim. I think you're still muted.
Didn't think I had anything right then. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll wait, John.
Okay. My concern is safety. I think it's clear that there's. I think it's clear that it's not clear if there was a permit or not for the work that was done. But the bottom line is, I want to make sure that the second floor was built and it's structurally sound. I want to make sure that anything that was added is safe. I want to make sure that the spa and any receptacles in the kitchen have ground fault protection. I think we definitely need to have it inspected. And I think what the appellant is proposing makes sense to me, is to have an architect address the issues that are current. I don't know how we can address the ones from the past, but I think it's definitely important that we make sure that the city has a chance to inspect it and sign off on it being safe. Thank you.
And I can address that, your concern, and I agree with you. So when I purchased the home, I had Jay O'Brien, who's one of our best inspectors in the area, inspect the house before purchasing it. And I had the plans and he looked at it and he laughed and he said, Nancy, this is a really well-built house. The foundation was done well, all the systems that were existing from 1978. And I really appreciate when people, especially this is what Timo said, he wants to protect me. And I kind of feel like what we're doing is we need to work together, that being protected from living in a house in 1978 is not what I need. I need some help in, I mean, a lot of people live in houses that are built in 1978. And the fact that on the city rehabilitation, home rehabilitation loan programs, taking a final inspection, at the bottom it says a final inspection was made by the Property Rehabilitation Federal Assistance Program. The construction work has been satisfactorily completed in accordance with the construction contracts and applicable city building codes. And that would have been in 1978, and that is signed by the head of the city. So I think what I'm trying to say is number 2 and number 5, I don't feel like that should be a responsibility or even a violation. I mean, it would be like walking into every home in town that was built in 1978 going, hey, is it safe? Or let me see what's going on. The other issues, you know, making sure that the spa is safe, I'm happy to cooperate with that. Dealing with getting an ADU permit, I'm happy to cooperate with that. I've already hired an architect to start working on that. The outdoor shower, which we put in because my daughter likes to shower her dog off after the beach, I'm definitely to get a permit for that. Cutting the hedges so that when people can pull out in the driveway, I'm definitely will cooperate with that. Anything that sounds incredibly reasonable that is to protect and is something that would, you know, seem like it would be for the next owner, I'm definitely happy to cooperate with that.
this is Chair Spieler. You know, John, you had mentioned the structural safety of the building, but I think, you know, this certificate of final inspection where they state that the work was satisfactory, completed to the current building codes, you know, that to me says that, you know, that structure was built according to that time properly. So I believe that would satisfy my concern that it, you know, wasn't just built without a building permit and it was, you know, not structurally safe.
I tend to agree with the chair.
I agree with you as well. I mean, you would know, just that there is no record of a permit. I think that goes back to the appellant's concern that, you know, there weren't good records at that time, possibly.
Mr. Chair, Jim Langhorn.
Yes, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I had a few questions or things that I wanted to see clarified. First for staff, Mr. Rodriguez. I understand through the testimony I've heard that this was a complaint-driven case. Is that correct? Can you hear me?
Chair, Board Member Langhorn, yes, this is correct. This was complaint from a complaint.
So what I want to stress for everybody here is that the city did not go looking for this. I seriously doubt they're going to wander into every old house in Santa Barbara looking for things that may or may not have been permitted. Having said that, I'm very concerned about this display, the sign off from Mr. Dreyer, who suggests that that it was in full compliance. Can you shed any more light on that? Is there any reason why that should be discounted? I'm sorry, I can't.
My apologies for not unmuting myself. I'm still getting used to it. Board Member Langhorn, what I found, there were previous permits that I found for previous work in the 1960s. I found other permits in the 80s. I found other permits in the 90s. And the biggest one that I found was from the owners that owned it during that time, during the time of that modification of approval, reapplying for a new second-story addition in 1997. And I wanted to ensure that whatever was constructed, we had make sure the current owners are safe and secure and future owners are safe and secure. So, Board Member Langhorn, yes, these are reasons why the city made the call into addressing the second story as unpermitted.
Okay, I have a question for the appellant at this point. As a real estate professional, you can hear me, correct? As a real estate professional, you do due diligence on projects before you represent them. I suspect that when you are doing one for your own family, you do twice as much. My question is simple. At what time did you become aware of the past modifications, the past documentation?
So I was given a lot of this material that you see today by the listing agent, which was Marilyn Ricard. And it, to me, because I don't know anything about the city real, but the HRLP program, when I see a date of a final inspection by a city official, I assume that the file is pretty complete. And then I looked at the seller's disclosures, the seller's transfer disclosure, and the seller's property questionnaire. And they all stated that everything was done with permits. Because the person who was selling it had passed away, it was a trust sale. I didn't have a person to talk to, but then I was given a set of plans, which we do have downloaded. That set of plans matched all the documentation that we have in here for the checklist for HRLP. And I had a man, I think I told you a moment ago, named Jay O'Brien, who's one of our top inspectors. inspect the house.
Right.
And he said that the main thing for me was just kind of inspecting the footings and the foundation, and he inspected it. And funny enough, he said, "Hey, it looks better than the house you live in." So I kind of got satisfaction through that. I had a full inspection.
Okay, thank you. I had another question, Mr. Chair. And this would be for the city attorney.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Yes, sir. Now, I wanted to ask a question of the city attorney if he's still present.
I am present.
Okay, I hope you have an answer for this one. I'm not sure. I know that the IRS sets no statute of limitations on past taxes due. What do we have in terms of a statute of limitation on building permitting process or zoning process? I'd be very curious to see what you can share with us today.
Board Member Langhorn, I'm a little confused in the question in terms of what do you refer to in terms of statute of limitations in this scenario?
You know, people are trying to account for something that was done in 1978 or wasn't done, depending on which side of this you were on. My question is there, to your knowledge, a statute of limitations on local laws and regulations, including building permits?
No, there's no statute of limitations. I mean, there's expiration dates we put in where if it's not acted on, we give notice to them and it expires. But in terms of, let's say something was not done up to code and it becomes uncovered later on in a zoning information report or subsequently, then we look at it by a case basis, you know, what was done, how, you know, was the city notified about it? Did they approve it prior to it in some way? So it really depends on the case. And the
I'm glad to
situation
hear
and
that
the
you're saying that
facts.
case by case these are reviewed, because if this appellant was forced to go back and try to take something built in 1978 to today's codes, not the codes that were in place at the time, I would consider that enormously unfair. And part of the reason for feeling that way is I've been a victim of this. I've been a victim of a complaint from a neighbor who didn't like the sound of my air conditioners, who I hired a general contractor to install for me, and he installed things that were not in compliance with the code. The only reason it came to light was because of a complaint. And the only thing that sits badly with me is the fact that they wanted me 15 years later to make these air conditioners that I thought were permitted comply with today's standards. Do you see the point I'm making?
Are you asking that question to me? I mean, I understand those points. I don't think it's appropriate for my role to weigh in the fairness, but I'd be happy to answer the question of at least the process and procedure of where we've had that. And there have been situations based on the circumstances where, you know, it's been, you know, permitted one way, and, you know, the city has reviewed it before and has seen it and has not done anything in acquiesce. And those circumstances, you know, maybe the city's a stop. And that's what we look at. The issue is called estoppel. Is there an estoppel placed on acting on enforcement or not? So that's sometimes how that situation has been handled.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, when the time comes, I have a motion to amend for compromise.
Okay, I would like to just make a comment before we do that. And, you know, I'm in favor of dismissing the violations number 2 and 5 because I feel that, you know, that all evidence points to the fact that the second story addition was built in 1979, that it was permitted and properly built to the standards of that time. This is based on the 1978 zoning approval, the tax assessor's report, and the home rehabilitation loan project that funded this project that was through the city. And I think a relative point is that the tax assessor, at least today, when plans are submitted to the building department and a permit is issued, the tax assessor gets a copy of those plans, and that's how they are notified of the of an improvement or new construction. So then they can go out and then assess the property for the improvements for tax purposes. So I would believe that, the same kind of process was in place in 1979. And I think as far as the missing permit on file goes, we've seen in the past, we've heard from Roy Hawthorne that these permits have been, in the past, have been lost, damaged, discarded, due to various situations like relocation of archive records, flooding of areas where documents are stored, and past closures of the building department. These are cases we've all heard before. And so because of these facts, I believe that this 1979 remodel addition of the second floor was more than likely permitted and built to the building standards of that time. And Tino Rodriguez did a great job here. He did a thorough review of the files and finding no permit on record for the second story addition, and with the rest of his items that I think the appellant is willing to address. So I'm in favor of upholding all the violations except for items number 2 and 5 that deal with the second story addition. I think the appellant's request is reasonable. And so, that's how I stand.
This is Nick Koontz. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
And then I think one thing Timo just discussed again, and I think the appellant addressed this, but I think it was in 1979 when the previous owner had filed for a second story addition that was completely different and of different size and room configuration than the 1978. So I think that was another second story addition that they wanted to do. And when I read through the description, that seemed like it was worded that way, the way I read it anyways. Okay, so with that, Nick, did you want to say something?
I just want to echo the same sentiments I'm hearing from everyone else. I agree that there's a serious concern for fairness of process here. And I think that the evidence does support the fact that this was most likely permitted, and that the city's records we all know to be imperfect, and is the likely explanation for the gap. So I would also support the modification of this enforcement case, and would like to. I hear former building official Stuffler in the back of my head reminding us that we have to make findings before we can make a motion. So that's where I think we should be focusing first, is some findings here.
Mr. Chair, board members, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Board Member Martin.
I have a couple questions for the appellant. You mentioned someone who was getting in their car to go on vacation and had some information they could get you later. What was that again?
It was just, I was speaking with Dennis Elledge, who, I don't know if you know Susan Elledge. She's,
Sure.
It's her husband, and he worked at, we were fortunate enough to get his number because my architect knows him, and he worked in the city at that time. And we were just trying to find information on how did HRLP work at that time, who, affected the programs. And he told us lots of information, which was great, because I want to really reiterate, I wasn't here to come to fight. I was here to really find out how this happened, because it's devastating. If my daughter didn't have her parents to help with this, it would be financially devastating. And it took weeks to get all this together, to figure out, wait, what happened here? And so it was him just explaining to us that it was a different program then. They were doing lots of loans, and there were definitely additions, because what we were trying to find out was Timo had said in the 2002 HRLP guidelines that they don't do them. And he said that's absolutely not what was happening back in the 70s and 80s. The guidelines were different.
Thanks. Now, my second question is this. Let's see how I can phrase this. It's nice that you say you're going to take care of these other problems, but
yes,
I wonder why you didn't do that already and come to us with some problem solved. And also the question, not to put you on the spot, but why were these things done without proper permits in the first place? I'm talking about the new things. Okay, and
Okay,
that always
yes.
scares me.
Yeah, and I'm happy to address that. When we purchased a house, it was the height of COVID. And my daughter actually was in the hospital for 9 days. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional today. She had part of her lung removed. And we felt like that we wanted to get the house and get her in. And so the stuff we did in the house, I really don't think we needed any permits for. I don't think refinishing floors and painting. And my husband did a lot of stuff with us and appliances. And when we were there, the plumber said, hey, we can put a bathroom in the garage. And she was great. She goes, oh, that would be great because then I could get some income. So that is really, honestly, that's a bad boo-boo. It's also a point of this type of situation where we know it's going to take a lot of time. The city was shut down, basically. I've heard lots of bad rumors about how everything's really backed up. It's very hard to get an ADU permit. I actually called the architect at that time, trying to figure out how we would do it. So we went ahead and did it. And I'm completely in the wrong for that. We put a bathroom in there and we moved the laundry outside, and we shouldn't have done that. But we're here, and that's truly the reasoning behind it. And it's, it would have taken more time, and it would have taken people coming in the house at a time when people didn't want people to come in a house. And that was it.
Okay. You didn't mention the electrical at the spa, but weren't you warned by someone that these things required a permit?
No, I've never actually thought about it, because this was they ordered on Amazon, and it's just one of those, little jacuzzis you put in your backyard. And there was already electric back there. So they it's actually a 110. It's not even a 220. You just plug it into something. But Timos tells me it needs a cover.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it would be much better if you had fixed some of these things before you came to us. We had much more of a good feeling. But
I would have loved to fix, I would have loved to fix them before I came to you, but I don't think that they're going to be. I think it's going to be a long road, because I don't think it's a quick fix. I think you have to get your architect, you have to get the plans, you have to, I think this came up before that could get fixed, if that makes any sense.
Okay. That clears it for me. I'd like to hear some findings and some suggestions from the other members.
All right. Well, my finding is that I agree with all the violations, except that I think numbers 2 and number 5 should be relieved. That's my finding, because I believe there was a permit at the time, and it just was not. It was lost in the process.
If I may, sorry, go ahead, James.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that we seek a compromise solution to the parts 2 and part B, or part 2 and part 5. She already has professional design staff in line. She has things she already has to do with them. I would ask that the board consider an as-built, a simple as-built be developed to just demonstrate compliance at the time that this work was done back in 1978. That does not mean a lot of demolition. Just seems that somebody's making their best estimation of what's there, documented for the staff. I feel badly for both the applicant or the appellant and staff. Both of them have gone to a lot of work here to present something to us. And I'm just looking for something that reflects the concerns we all have without going to extraordinary expense if we can help it.
Okay, this is Chair Spieler. So one thing I saw presented here was a fairly complete set of plans. I think, were those dated, Ms. Hamilton, in 1978?
They are.
And it appears that those were the plans that were permitted. So perhaps we could go, perhaps that could serve as an as-built, and somebody could come through and just verify, yes, the structure that's there now complies to these plans. So I think that's a good recommendation, Mr. Langhorn.
This is Nick Kuntz. I'm not terribly familiar with the as-built process. Can staff comment on what would be involved if we did find this to be an appropriate compromise? If we did make a motion, what are we really asking the applicant to do? What are the implications of that process?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Coons, thank you for the question. That's a great question. And I wanted actually similar question to Board Member Langhorn. Is your intent to propose that an as-built be used, submitted to the city, showing that it met compliance at the time that it was built according to the codes in effect at the time it was built?
Yes, there would be to the benefit of everybody involved.
It has been my experience in the past that that has been accepted at other jurisdictions. I would defer to the chief building official to see if that would be an acceptable method for documentation.
Mr. Chair, question for Mr. Barajas. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Oh,
Right.
I think that was directed toward the Christina Dye, the chief building official.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Some jurisdictions have created an amnesty program for situations like this where there was work that couldn't be verified by permit records. But I don't believe the city of Santa Barbara has any such program available. And the code is updated every 3 years, and the requirements for each code cycle are by application date. So I'm not sure that we would be able to stamp a plan from 1978 as approved. But, as a compromise, we could look into what that process would look like for projects like this, and maybe not permit it, but at least inspect it as a part of the inspections for the additional work that the applicant will have to apply for.
I have concerns about this unraveling on the appellate if we allow any further inspections. I feel like maybe these inspections have perhaps already been more aggressive than necessary, and concerned about the fairness of process here. Construction that's at least 20 years old, even by staff's findings, if it's not built in 78, staff does point to a 97 application. So in any event, that's too far back for me to feel comfortable unraveling on a new owner who hasn't even owned it for a year.
Mr. Chair, board members, and building official, in the past, we have seen, as the chief building official mentioned, there is some jurisdictions that have an amnesty program or some way to address these issues where you have work done without a permit, without the benefit of a contract and inspection. There has been times where a licensed design professional, usually it's a licensed engineer, would do an assessment of the structure and write up a report stating for the sounders of that. So, I'm posting this as more of a question to Board Member Langhorn to understand what the proposition was.
Jose, I think you're right. When I was a fire marshal, I'd get an old bridge and I wanted to make sure my fire truck could get over it. And I was very lucky to be able to find an old retired civil engineer, structural engineer, who would go out there and did it, for me, and it was invaluable. Problem was one time he got a really bad case of poison oak, and I couldn't get him out anymore. But yeah, I'm amenable to that. I just don't want this to be a job for Jesus, getting this done. I think an amnesty program is way past due in Santa Barbara, because look at all that old stuff. We're going to be buried in these appeals if there's any idea that this is a possibility.
Jim Marston here. Got a question. I liked the comments from Mr. Langhorn and from Paul Spieler, and I wondered if it would be possible to, as was suggested, look at the plans from '78 and have an engineer or architect look at those and tell us whether the place is safe. And as Christine said, maybe it can't be a permit, but if it can just say, yes, those two items look safe based on the as-built, the plans from '78, maybe we could drop those problems if we find out that it's safe. In fact, because our basic concern is safety too, right? So is that possible? Could we just do what was suggested, was have someone look at those plans and see whether at the time the '78 codes that they were okay?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Martin, even when for jurisdictions that do have a program where they can legalize or document the structural soundness and other fire and life safety requirements of these structures that were built without the benefit of inspections, even in that case, there is a combination of, it could be not a high detail set of plans, but there are some site inspections and site assessments that happen. For example, the footings are dug to check the actual depth. A lot of times, a portion of the wall is exposed to check the wiring, mechanical or plumbing elements to ensure that those look good. It's not super invasive, but it still needs to be done to ensure that it looks as if it was built to minimum code standards.
Now,
So-
this is Chair Steeler. Now, one thing we have on this, though, we do have the home loan rehabilitation program inspector looking at the project and making a comment that that construction was, I forgot what the term was, but he said was well built or in good condition. So we do have some inspections of the time. We have a plan that's dated at that time, which is very light. It would be, I think it would be safe to assume that that's the plan that was used to build the house. So I'm wondering, we don't have, I think it's maybe a good idea. I like the idea of having an engineer come through and writing a letter just saying, hey, this building looks like it's safe and built to the standards of the time frame in 1978, 1979. But, there were some inspections, and it looks to me, I just really have the strong feeling that a permit was issued for this building, and the fact that the permit's not on file is not a reason to say that it wasn't permitted. So I think we recognize that, just because the permit's not on file doesn't mean the building wasn't permitted. And it seems like all evidence points to the fact that it was permitted. I'm going to circle back to the 1979 application for a second story. That I believe is completely different than this 1978 second story addition. I think those are two separate, as the appellant had stated. There was one other item I think I saw where there was a water heater application, I believe it was, and that the owner had put down that it was a one-story. I don't know. It just looked like it was filled out quickly, and maybe it was that he was confused. And I don't know why it says one story there, but maybe he was saying, hey, this water heater is going to be on the first level. I don't know what that was. That's the only aberration that I can see on this whole thing. Everything else seems pretty clear cut to me that this was built in 1978 and it was permitted, and we just don't have a permit on record.
So this is Nick Kuntz.
That permit was lost.
I'm concerned that in the absence of any existing amnesty program, or a way to do this as built cleanly, that we're creating more of a problem here for the appellant than solving anything. And I think, I'm looking for findings, and I have to say that I'm finding that the city has not demonstrated beyond a reasonable doubt that this work was done without permit. And I think that the burden of proof is on the city. And so for that reason, I'm inclined to move forward with striking that from the enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Just want to remind the board that, we're not here to create any policy or set policy. The function of the board is to look at the facts, as you stated, Board Member Coons, and, we'll vote on the motion or amend it or accept it or deny it. So, without, as mentioned, not having some kind of amnesty program, we're not here to try to set a policy or find a solution, but do take your recommendations on the motion that stands. If the board feels, based on the findings you have stated, that items 2 and 3, 2 and 5 would have to be omitted, then that's the board suggestion.
Chair Spieler, it's Jeff Arbuckle. I completely agree with Board Member Kuntz and Chair Spieler that that's not necessary to create as-builts and have this inspected. So.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more comments from the board on this? And are we ready to make a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not looking to create undue task for the appellant, but I am looking to see somebody document that it is structurally sound. You don't have to do anything but read the news and see what went on in Florida and how that can got kicked down the road, too many times. If it seems so structurally sound, then somebody should just produce a letter saying that it's structurally sound and let it be.
Mr. Langhorne, can I say something to that? Can I say something to that? I so appreciate what you're saying, and I really appreciate what you're saying, because I see those things happen too. And that's why I had a very thorough inspection when I purchased it. And I did have someone look at the foundation, and I did have someone that is probably one of the best inspectors, because my daughter lives there. It's the most important thing in my life. So I feel very comfortable. And if I have to say something to the city and write a letter that's notarized saying that I had someone inspected and that I feel good about it, I'm happy to do that. If that's, because I understand where you're coming from, but I'm so grateful for the other people on the board saying, I can already hear when you start adding things for us to do. I can't come back to you guys. It's just going to be, okay, now Nancy goes out and hires lots of people with her daughter's money and tries to fix all of this. So I'm grateful if it can be done. What I'm saying is, I hear what you're saying, but I'm okay. How can I say this any other way? I'm very, very comfortable with the structural building of the 1978 project. And I think we keep on saying that on the final inspection that it was an inspector, but it wasn't an inspector who completed it and said that it was to city building codes. It was the head building official at that time. Charles Dreyer was head of the whole city building, and he's the one who signed it.
I saw that. Well, we have at least one structural engineer here that feels it is satisfactory. So this is reflected in the record, and we'll go with that.
Okay, this is Chair Spieler. I feel comfortable with that.
There we go. Thank you, Paul.
All right.
I just shared some findings to the chat if we want to include those findings in the motion. If we all agree on them, maybe we want to edit them. I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Board Member Coons. Yes, if you could please, as you state your motion, clearly state the findings for your motion. Thank you.
somebody want to take a stab at a motion? I could take a couple minutes and try and draft something.
All right. I'll take a stab at the motion. So I would like to amend the standing motion as follows. Uphold violations 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9 noted in the city's notice of violation letter. However, violations number 2 and 5 dealing with the second story addition are hereby dismissed, and the second story addition shall be considered properly permitted and built to the standards of that time. The findings are that that there is no permit on record. However, this doesn't mean that there wasn't a permit on record because of past problems with preserving permits, and also the finding that the tax assessor documented a second story addition and assessed property values on that. And thirdly, that this was very well documented by the home loan rehabilitation program inspector. And that is how I would like to amend the standing motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to repeat your motion is to remove items 2 and 3 from the NOV.
Correction, 2 and 5.
Thank you.
Remove items 2 and 5.
Correction. Your motion is to remove items 2 and 5 from the notice of violation. All other items 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are to be addressed, and that is based on the tax assessor record, the loan report documentation, and the inspections done by the housing inspector. Is that correct?
Yes, and also the tax assessor assessment of the second story addition.
Thank you. I think at this point, you guys can, the members could make a motion.
I want to, sorry, go ahead.
And the concurrence of Paul Speiler, a noted structural engineer, that his cursory review of this shows it to be adequate, structurally adequate.
Just as a point of order from previous experience, I believe we have a standing motion that we have to vote on before we can modify this.
You're right.
My note, okay, so my notes say that we can amend the standing motion.
Mr. Doimus?
Yeah, Mr. Doimus, can you please weigh in? Do they need to deny the first standing motion and then propose a amended motion?
If we have a standing motion and we want to tweak it as we're going through this process, we can. If we're substantively changing the motion, then we wouldn't do that. So if we're taking a motion and we're pretty much in agreement and adding something here or there to it, for expedience, it's fine. But if we're substantively changing the motion based on some additions or subtractions, then I would vote on the standing motion and then restart that process.
Mr. Doimus, is it your opinion that these subtractions are substantive?
Just to be clear, what were the two subtractions again?
2 and 5.
We want to uphold all 9 violations except for numbers 2 and 5.
Yeah, that would be substantive if we're moving it. So okay. I would do that.
Okay.
And
so,
Mr. Chair, my comments were only to add additional findings for what we're doing, not to change anything.
This is John Maloney. I'd like to make a motion that we not uphold the building official's decision.
I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Jeff Hornbuckle.
Aye.
Nick Coates.
Aye.
James Langhorn.
Aye.
John Maloney.
Aye.
Jim Marston,
Aye.
Paul Spieler. Aye. Okay, the motion fails. So we'll now make an amended motion.
And if I may add, what I would do is I would take the NOV, take which parts which parts stand, which parts do not stand, and then when you talk about findings, just provide the reasoning. And the purpose for that is for example, if there was an appeal, but whether on this from the applicant if they wanted to do so, at least the next level, because this decision doesn't go to city council, it goes, I think it should go straight to Superior Court for review on a writ. Pursuant to Chapter 130, at least the court could see the reasoning behind what you did, why you did, because great deference is given to commissions, especially technical commissions like this that have your expertise. So courts want to see what was your reasoning, what was your basis of how you came to your conclusion. So when you do that, it doesn't have to be long; it could be one sentence or two, but that's it on that. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to add that point.
No problem.
So if I may, I'd like to try to make a fairly concise motion here, that we amend the notice of violation, striking numbers 2 and 5 because of our findings that the city has not demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that this work was done without permit, because we find there is evidence to support the notion that this was permitted and the city has misplaced those permit files, that the plan sets that appear to have been approved by then chief building official show that this structure was sound, that we don't have any safety concerns. Were there some other findings we need to include?
Well, this is Jim. Nick, I just kind of take umbrage with your fact that the city hasn't proved there was no permits. They've showed that in the records, they show no permits. So I think it's wrong to say that they have to prove somehow there are permits. I think we should just say.
Actually, Jim, the city is alleging that there were no permits, and they have to prove that. That how can we ask an applicant who doesn't have the 20 plus years of history to prove that the city didn't lose the permits? We all know that happens. So I think the city has not demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that it was done without a permit, as they're alleging.
Mr. Chair, I would like to just note that the findings stated by Board Member Coons did not align with your findings. So just as a point of order to the board members, if you need to discuss further, to make sure that the findings for your motion are agreed upon.
Okay, I would like to add my findings to Nick Coons's findings, and those findings are that the property was inspected and has a final certificate of inspection from the Home Rehabilitation Loan Program that was done through the city of Santa Barbara. And the second finding I would like to add would be that the tax assessor, went in and assessed the property in 1978, 1979 for a second story addition. And they're usually notified, by the building department. So those are my two findings that I would like to add.
That's be my third bite. Yeah. I had one finding to add as well. In reviewing all of this, I'm supported in my support of this motion by Paul's review of what he has been able to see and show some confidence in what's there. So that's why I'm going to throw my support behind this.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, can we take another stab at the motion with the stated findings?
Sure, Nick, why don't you repeat your motion with
um,
findings and then add mine again?
Yeah. Before I try, I want to understand Mr. Barajas' concern that the motion didn't align with the findings.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Board Member Coons. The findings that were stated throughout the discussion by Mr. Chair Spieler was the tax assessor records, the loan report, and the inspection by the home rehabilitation inspector. And then what's being added by Board Member Langhorn is the opinion of the chair, Mr. Spieler, who is a licensed structural engineer.
Okay, but how did that not align with the motion that I had already proposed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Board Member Coons. The findings you stated were based on the city not able to prove that there were permits pulled for this and inspections performed. So it's perfectly okay to add that, just it was not part of the original findings stated by Mr. Chair Spieler.
So does, I heard discussion, Chair Marston, or sorry, not Chair, Board Member Marston did not agree with my finding. Does anyone else feel like we should or should not include that finding?
This is Chair Spieler. I think we should include your finding, Mr. Kuntz.
Okay, I'll just be a jerk and bring it up again because Nick kind of cut me off. I'm just saying the city can't prove something they don't have. So I don't know why you want to blame the city. You can just say it has a history of things being lost or misplaced. And these other items that Paul Spieler mentioned show that we think that it's been acceptable and was permitted. But Nick, I'm just saying, I don't think the statement that the city hasn't proved there was no permit, that's impossible to do if they can't find it, unless we think they're lying. Of course, we don't think that. So I just don't know if we just say why we think it's been permitted is the point that I would like to see here.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
Paul,
I'm not looking for blame.
okay, I think Paul spelled it real good. Here's the reasons why we think we're going to let 2 and 5 go, because of all the other proof that we've seen. That's all.
Okay. I want to make sure that I have all of the findings before I attempt this again. The tax assessors
The tax assessor's report,
the loan report,
the home rehabilitation loan report and inspection, and then the yes,
opinion of
and
Chair Spieler. I think there was one more.
yeah, and then
Mr.
it
Chair.
was the 1978 zoning approval.
Was that it, Mr. Barajas?
Mr. Chair, board members, my notes have the tax assessor documentation, the loan report, and the inspection by the inspector from the home rehabilitation program. And then adding Mr. Langhorn's statements and opinion of that board member or Chairman Spieler as a licensed structural engineer found it also to be sound. Or in his opinion. In his opinion.
Yeah, one more time. I'm still missing one. I've got 3 out of 4 here, but go through your list one more time, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair and board members, this is what I have on my list. Based on the tax assessor reports, I'm going to pause for a second. Although,
yes, thank you.
sorry for the interruption. On my list I have is based on the tax assessor report, the loan report from the rehabilitation program, housing rehabilitation program, and the inspection by the housing inspector.
Okay. Okay, so now I have the findings. Sorry about this, Ms. Hamilton. We're just trying to make this perfect for you, as clear as we can. So the motion that I'm proposing is that we modify the notice of violation to strike issues 2 and 5.
Yeah.
Based on our findings in the tax assessor's report, the home rehab loan report, and inspection by housing inspector, as well as the opinion of Chair Spieler as a structural engineer.
Yeah, so the housing inspector is really the home rehabilitation loan program inspector. Is that correct, Ms. Hamilton? You're muted again.
The signature of Charles Dreyer at the time in 1978, he was actually the head building official for the city of Santa Barbara. He was the head.
So
He wasn't just with our, he wasn't, the signature for that wasn't just from the home rehabilitation. He was the actual head of the building administration and for the city from 1977 to 1987. And he signed the final.
Charles Dreyer, you said?
Charles Dreyer, and I think I have that, I sent that as evidence because I was sent all of the building official administrators and the dates that they served, because I was trying to check who had actually signed the final inspection, and it was him. It wasn't the HRP, it was actually the head of the city of building inspection.
Okay, real quick. Seen that document?
Beg your pardon?
Have we seen that document?
It's in the file. Yeah, it's in the file. It's right after the one that says, I put them in numerical order. And so it goes, the signature of Charles Dreyer and where they have the loan numbers that were dispersed to the, for the construction. And then the next page, it says building official administrations from 1972 to 1982. You see that?
Okay, very good. That's the letter I would like. I think we need to put, instead of home inspector, we should put Charles Dreyer, chief building official.
Okay.
Letter.
And that document, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. It's an inspection, or it's a.
It was the final inspection. It says the certificate of final inspection. And then at the top, it says loan number D78024 and then 67MC054. And at the bottom, it says this is certification of a final inspection. The final inspection has been made of the property rehabilitated with the federal financial assistance. The construction work has been satisfactorily completed in accordance with the construction contracts and applicable city building codes. And then it's Charles Dreyer who signs it. And that is in September of 78, page 6.
Yeah, I have that document in front of me now. And Dreyer is spelled D-R-E-I-E-R.
D-R-E-I-E-R, yes.
Okay. Let's see if I can. One more time. I move that we amend the notice of violation, striking items 2 and 5, based on our findings that the tax assessor's report, the home rehabilitation loan report, the certificate of final inspection signed by the chief building official of the time, Charles Dreyer, and the opinion of Chair Spieler as a structural engineer support that this work was done with permit.
Okay, we need a motion from the board.
That was
to
a motion.
approve. Okay. So we need a
This is
second.
John-
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Coons. We need a second on
This
this
is John
motion.
Maloney. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Okay, we'll call the vote. Again, we'll use roll call and use your cameras. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Jeff Hornbuckle.
Aye.
Nick Coons.
Aye.
James Langhorn,
Aye.
John Maloney,
Aye.
Jim Marston,
Aye.
Paul Spieler, aye. Okay, the motion passed. All right, we have adjournment, so we need a motion from the board to adjourn, and then we'll
So
use
moved.
roll call to vote.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's call the vote. We'll use roll call to adjourn the motion. Jeff Hornbuckle,
Yes.
Nick Kuhn,
Yes.
James Langhorn, James Langhorn.
Yes.
We'll come back. Okay, great. John Maloney,
Yes.
Jim Marston,
Positively.
and Paul Spieler. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Can I just thank all of you very much for your service and your time today and for listening and for helping out. Thank you.
All right, welcome.
Bye-bye.